guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade, as we finally, albeit slightly late, get around to having a look at the Hashashins. Well, that's the pronunciation we're going to go with, but yeah, we'll maybe just say the new unit, the new tier 5, that's probably what we'll go for. So, yeah, I've kind of had a bit of a mixed experience with these guys so far. So, initially, I didn't really get that much time with them when they first came out, but the few games that I had with them really struggled to get them to apply. Quite fragile, not very many of them, damage potential wasn't that high. But since then I have been finding I have been getting along a lot better, almost increasingly better, particularly recently really enjoying them a lot more. I feel like there may have been some AI changes halfway through between when they sort of first released originally and kind of where we are now, a couple of weeks or a week or two after they've released. But anyway, been really enjoyable. So how does the unit play? Primarily for me, they're playing quite a lot like Sons of Fenrir. Not just for the jump, if anything not really at all because of the jump, that's just sort of a byproduct, but because of the high burst damage, low unit numbers and high movement speed makes them a very flexible unit that's kind of easy to maneuver around the battlefield. And that is how I'm primarily playing them. Trying to avoid the really big head-on fights. Trying to always get that little sort of micro flank just around the corner of the stalwarts as friendly stalwarts engage, or picking off the javelin unit that's just at the side because they move so quickly. They have this 7 base movement speed. They can actually get around particularly courtyards and stuff really quite quickly. Of course, you can also use them when there's isolated enemy archers, stuff like that that's just not protected. You can use them like sort of the classic Sons of Fenrir in that way, and obviously they kill that stuff just fine. But in terms of damage, primarily using their slashing damage, really high slashing AP and really good slashing base at 2100 means that they apply a pretty nice amount of damage. Just got to remember there is only 10 of them in a unit, and even though they have almost 17,000 hit points, their defensive stats for a tier 5 are relatively low, and they do feel, at least to me, a fairly sort of squishy unit. Now, in terms of veterancy lines, I've been going down the bottom line. Largely for things like, maybe we should actually just run through their abilities. Prowl, which is their lump, run and sort of leap. So it increases the damage, but it also drops a smoke bomb as they leap over their enemies. So they basically leap into a fight and deploy smoke at the same time, which makes it harder for enemies to target them. So to my mind, that almost acts as almost like a self-defense mechanism as they get themselves into the fight. And that's this Prowl ability. Next up, they have an Eviscerate ability, where they basically, it's just a burst damage ability. And they cause increased amount of damage on a couple of second cooldown, but obviously they only have this set amount of action points. And finally, they have the Smoke Bomb, where they throw a specific smoke bomb in a specific area, but it reduces the chances of them getting targeted. Essentially, I don't use this at all because I'm on the bottom line and I get a smoke bomb essentially with Prowl anyway, so there's really very, very few situations when this as an ability is really very useful. So I said a little bit there, you can see that they all cost action points to do any one of these abilities. And so they basically start with 6 action points, and every time you use one of these abilities, even though the ability goes on cooldown, it'll only be on cooldown for a couple of seconds. But you can only do this so many times because the time it takes to recharge your action points is significantly longer. And that's what limits your ability. But to be honest, 6 action points, you're either dead or won the fight by that point. So in reality, I find it doesn't really apply all that much. Now, in terms of doctrines, I haven't bothered paying to unlock the extra damage doctrine, the one that basically gives them 2 hits, which you'll get through the seasonal challenges. I probably will put it on when I get that, but so far I haven't got that one going. I have got the increased penetration damage across all fronts, an increased unit damage through increasing the damage to units, and the base 70-point damage increase. A little bit of extra health and slashing damage that you get from one of the epic damage doctrines. I can't even remember where this doctrine came from. It was at the end of one of the seasons. A little bit of a unique one, but carried that around with me for a while. A bit of a defense doctrine, mostly for the reduction in damage taken really than the 8Z increase in defensive points, but it's there. Probably will end up swapping this one out for the double strike when I get that from the seasonal challenges, and of course a siege fighter just to increase their base damage points. So it's making them a pretty solid unit. Obviously, they are a seasonal unit, so it's not too expensive to repair. Only 6,300 at the moment per unit cost, so not too bad. But anyway, should we hop into some battles with them? Let's see if we can burst down a few enemies with some of their damage potential. So, we kick things off on a little bit of Riverland's Castle Siege. Onto the final base point, and we're pulling the unit up onto the top. As we come up, see some javelins over on the left, immediately go for them. They do get a volley into us, which does do some damage, but you can see the unit gets in fairly convincingly. Get grabbed by them all, but we're able to lock him down with a hero, keep him pinned down with the glaive, bang, use the unit on him, and get the kill. And the javelins completely go down. The only damage we really took from them was from the volley, so against a unit like that that's isolated and on its own, they are really effective. Next up, I see the enemy archers. He does see me coming, and he pulls them back, but the unit auto-locks on. And we do take a little bit of damage here, and I'm not really quick enough to activate my second ability again, which I really should have done a lot quicker. But we're still able to get the unit down. I focus on getting the archers down, as a bit of friendly cavalry turns up, and we're able to finish off and get the kill on the unit. So you can see how they can wipe out quite a lot of stuff quite quickly. Then I think I get a little bit unsure about what I wanted to do next with the unit. I don't want to try and avoid these really sort of big fights on point, because that's where this unit goes wrong. So we go and target these couple of units down here on the edge, but that does lead us into a little bit of a bigger fight, and that's when we end up getting a little bit carried away. And as we get drawn into the bigger fights, that's when the unit tends to fail. And that's kind of been my experience over and over with this unit. As soon as you get drawn into those larger fights, it's a bit more of a melee, it's a little bit unclear where the enemy are and here and there, that's when it tends to all go a little bit wrong for me. Although they did manage to just get me an extra cheeky little final kill with the last little bit of life. Next up, we load into a little bit of Hidden City. As we're just losing the A point, I was trying to get myself over, but wasn't going to be able to get there in time. I was going to pull back, but actually a bit of the team engaged some of these stalwarts on the stairs, and I thought, let's just go for it. Go on with my glaive boost, get stuck in. And actually, we fare okay against these stalwarts. Frontally, this unit tends not to do very well, and then as reinforcements turn up, that suddenly becomes a fight that I really don't want to be involved in. It changed from that sort of isolated unit fight into a wider fight, and that's why I pull out of the situation and get back to the supply point. We lost a unit, but all in all, not too bad. Getting ourselves healed up, trying to decide where I want to go next. Then I notice that there's a little bit of activity on the minimap behind the supply point. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, that could be an interesting point to go to. That's perhaps the next place that I want to be. So as I pull out the back of the supply point, we've got a bit of stuff going on. We've got some palace guards kicking around, a couple of stalwarts, and some fortebraccios. Getting onto a little bit of a bigger fight that I really want to be in, but there is a little bit of a flanking opportunity, so I pull the unit round to try and get on the side. I hesitate slightly, just a little bit too long, and it does allow a chunk of them to initially get away, catch a few units at the bottom, and then start to chase them up the stairs. Again, now I'm going to be hesitant here, because if we're the first one into a braced unit of stalwarts with fortebraccios behind, this unit will die almost instantly. Wait until the friendly units engage a bit first, prevents us a little bit of an easier opportunity to get in. We can get in, target some of the enemy heroes, and just put the unit to work. And we've soon got ourselves up to 50 kills as we wipe the unit out. And this is where these Hashashins, really hard to say, who actually do work quite well. These sort of more isolated fights, that's where I kind of like them. Playing a little bit like a unit like a Sons of Fenrir, that type of thing. Working pretty well, really kind of enjoyable. Finally, we end up on a little bit of Reggie, everyone's favourite map, and thankfully been restored back to the old format, which is much nicer in my opinion. Anyway, initially just holding on the walls, looking to see if that musket was going to climb over, and kind of trying to decide where I want to deploy my unit, because you can see we've got people coming from all directions. Now the main battleground comes in at the gate, and we've got the siege towers landing, obviously at various points along the wall, and there's quite a few ways people can kind of come on this map. A little bit of an easy start. Just a few little pikes that came in from the battleground. Just go and grab a couple of kills off them. Just get us a handful of kills. Cheeky not to, wouldn't it? Anyway, after that, it's kind of deciding where the main first push is going to be. I decided it looks like there was a little bit of stuff pushing on the minimap at the back supply point. So that was kind of my first point of interest. As we come up, we see we've got a couple of stalwarts pushing in. So rather than just pushing straight at the head of them, I'm pushing around the side. And to be honest, most of them are dead by the time we get there. But you can see I'm trying to keep that sort of flanking in mind. But then, as we start to win the fight, I push straight in, get the unit in, and I'm just trying to use that 2 ability, at least sort of fairly regularly. We get some enemy pikes sort of reinforcing and pushing up. I'm just trying to target the stalwarts predominantly because they're the hardest thing for my unit to kill, and keep pushing in, and we wipe through the rest of the stalwarts and the pikes fairly easily. A little bit of a dangerous place to stand really, because there's those bombards there at the back. They do try and treb us, but it lands too far back for us to really be a problem. We do end up losing one of the 10 units, we've only got 9 left, but the treb doesn't really get anywhere near us, and thankfully we don't get shot by a bombard, so it's all good. Get back and start to get ourselves healed up at the supply point. So you can pretty rapidly wipe out a unit of stalwarts, goes up to 40 kills there. So long as you just don't face them head on in a narrow corridor, then actually they kind of seem to do okay. But anyway, with those dead, it's back down. Looks like the primary push is going up on the B point. Just checking nothing's coming A. I'm thinking about, do we want to just deal with stuff on the point, if that's where they're going to push, or do we want to try and flank around the back? I just saw a few people on our team look like they were pushing up the stairs from the other side, so I was kind of thinking about pushing over. Very tempted to go for those halberds. I was just trying to gauge what was there, but then we have got these Varangian guards there. I don't want to be taking these guys on frontally. If we can catch them on a flank, I think we've got a good chance, but they will certainly get into rage mode long before we get to kill them, and more than likely they'll just end up winning on a frontal one-on-one fight. So decide to avoid that one, and in the meantime, we get flanked by some of the enemies coming out the tunnels. Friendly flamers do a really good job of keeping the enemies locked down, so we can just get in, immediately start picking up a couple of hero kills, grab ourselves 2 hero kills, and about another 20 unit kills. So that's kind of an example, I guess, of where one of the larger fights that does work. And that works because the flamers were there to provide CC. It would have worked really with any unit, but this with the burst damage works even nicer. Now here we had no choice but to take this fight. I get the unit in and I'm trying to just use that 2 ability fairly rapidly. I try and get my hero out so I can activate my damage buff on the glaive, and actually you can see we managed to get in and get quite a chunk of damage in fairly easily. Grab ourselves an extra hero kill, and you can see actually, like against that enemy longsword there, how quickly it bursts down enemy heroes when the unit gets stacked on top of them. We do take some losses, but that was a pretty critical fight for the B point, and we're killing some pretty high tier stuff with these guys, so they really are not too bad in these sort of fights. But you see, even on that fight on the B point, I'm trying to push the unit a little bit wider, trying to sort of get that slight flank in so you're just not going into the front of a braced unit, trying to at least land a little bit on the side so we get a cleaner jump over them. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, because they are still a fragile unit, so you still go down pretty easily. Anyway, get the unit pretty well healed up, pulling back down and trying to decide where we're going to go next. Some enemy stalwarts start to take a bit of a look at the A point, which I kind of decide what I want to do here. I definitely do not want to charge them frontally. So I've kind of got them still in my mind, even at this point as we're moving on. I'm thinking that, well, they're not going to advance until sort of we clear off point, because they're just going to sit there. They start to push in a little bit further, and you can see now sort of piqued my interest a bit more. So we've got a stack of Romans. Actually 2 stacks of Romans, I think. I almost get myself into a spot of trouble with my hero. Now this is a fight that I want, but I don't want to take head on. Again, I don't want to be in a big melee fight. So I'm trying to sort of skirt around the outside and decide where my opportunity to get my burst damage is, and preferably get out alive. So the second set of Romans goes in. I decide that's my chance because they've now made their play. They've used their main damage ability. I can now get in, and then we can go to town a little bit with the unit. I can use my hero as well to get a bit of extra damage in, and the unit with their 2 ability bursts down, and we get through, or at least help get through the rest of those Romans along with the rest of the team. Obviously, in that sort of situation, it's really critical to have some teammates with you, because it's a lot easier to be able to do anything. We get pushed again from the back for some more Romans, but I just decided to go straight in that time. They'd already made their play into the front of those stalwarts, and we can get in and burst them down. And you can see how many kills we pick up, even though there's Fortebrachos and stacks of team on that fight as well. We're up to 100 kills now, because this unit does have really quite high burst damage, and that is kind of important to note, because, well, I guess it's nice to have high burst damage. I guess it's perhaps not that important to note. It's nice to know that they do have high burst damage. Anyway, that poleaxe was dealing with those archers on the wall, so I didn't really think it was a problem that we needed to race over to. So I'll go back and get them healed up on the supply point. Try and catch this little chain of scimitar, but he does manage to get himself out with his escape skill, as we managed to get hit by some javelins, although thankfully not fatally. And pull back and again trying to decide how this fight is going to develop. Some palace guards come in, okay, don't really want to go them frontally, have got friendly flames, again, flanking round, and this is continuously, and this is how I play Sons of Fenrir, coming in from the clear flank where they're not braced into, there's not much there, and we get a bit stuck in and grab a couple of extra kills. Didn't really do all that much in that fight though, because a lot of the stuff was really dealt with by the team. Friendly stalwarts come in, again, don't want to face them frontally, thinking I've probably got the speed to actually get round the back, but I think by this time the bloodlust was up on the team and they're already long since dead. So there's really nothing for me to do. Yeah, good job team, they were a lot quicker than I was. So it looks like we've pretty well got this game in the bag. It's just about deciding where we want to, or where the enemy is going to make their sort of final push. They've only got 3 minutes, they've already lost a lot of their units, and really they've probably got one more go in them, and after that, in reality, because it's been quite a dominant game, I suspect we're probably going to end up pushing out. Obviously, it's very tempting to go for these archers here. Decided to leave the unit back because it kind of felt almost like bait somehow. But it wasn't really. The friendly Laos go in. Some camel lancers do come in to kind of counter them. So in that sense, I suppose it kind of was. Pretty good play by the camel lancers to catch all those Laos there. But for me, I'm kind of looking for those infantry fights. So I'm pulling my unit back across. Back to see if I can get any sort of elevation up and around. See if there's anything we can kind of flank on. A couple of shield maidens here. I probably should have taken this fight because we could have got in from behind. The enemy hero was distracted and it probably would have been quite a nice kill. But I just hesitated a bit too long. The friendly unit pulled out with the shields anyway, so I decided to go back because inevitably we're going to have to fight them on B anyway, and at least there's a bit more friendly team support here to kind of deal with it. So the two mauls come down. The enemy shield maidens coming into play. I'm trying to decide how I want to make my move here, but as they go on to point, we haven't got a lot of cap on it, so I really have no choice. Decide, let's just go frontally, go for the damage buff, try and get the interrupt on the shield maidens with my hero, and let's just go full damage boost. And actually, it really almost kind of works. We basically burst down one unit of shield maidens before I get myself killed. Went from 100 to 130 kills, which is pretty well a unit of shield maidens. But then with me dead and their health depleted, the poor unit does eventually get themselves overwhelmed. But the team does manage to get over to the point. I managed to stop the B point from getting capped, and we do manage to hold out and win from here. So it's kind of surprising to me that the unit was even able to deal with those shield maidens head on. It cost me the unit. I guess it's a one-to-one trade, not really what you want to be doing, but when push comes to shove, I was quite impressed by that. Anyway, I've been kind of enjoying them, yeah. Towards the end, they've been a lot better than I thought they were going to be. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video though. If you have, do let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's been quite a long one. You've done well if you've made it to 18 minutes of me waffling on. So if you have, do let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all on the next one.